Good morning, beloved ones. It is so blessed, so holy, and so right to be together on this Palm Sunday. This day of naming, gathered into the praise power of hallelujahs of Jesus entering Jerusalem. From Bethlehem to Jerusalem, not such a great distance in time or mileage, but a great distance in the events occurring in this earth, in this eternity system. When Jesus came into this world, men believed that the earth and themselves was the only place existing for man. There are many in the earth today who still believe this same thing, that the earth is the only planet of consciousness. They believe this because they are unable to expand their souls and their minds to comprehend the great vastness and universal power of God, and of his intricate power of manifestation in perfection for all forms of life in any and all eternity systems. It is the profound action in God realization that when we realize God, we must realize his Son. And through his Son, we are before Abraham and before the world. We are universal. There can be no longer the tightness of man capsuled into finite selfhood. Man is infinite. He is infinite as a being in this world, this earth, this eternity system. To me, I see our eternity system as exactly 1/2 its age when our Lord came to this earth. I have looked into the records of the ages of our earth. I have looked into the Akashic records of Jesus. I have looked into the records of men who live in this world, and I have seen that we are just half born. And we are reaching towards another degree of realization. So now we have entered in the upward climb towards that greater half, in which consciousness and awareness are uttermost in our being. Because if man is not aware, he is not awake, and he is only partly asleep and living in a dream. And his existence from 1 to 90 or 80 or 70 years means nothing. He has been in this world, he has visited it with a little vegetation and with a little animation, and he has amounted to nothing because he does not understand God. It is a work of all teachers that they must interpret God and must give of themselves in godlike manners. It is the work of all who know to pass on their awakeness and their awareness. So we on Palm Sunday are here today with branches in our hands, and we are walking this long trail of Jesus. And we are seeing how he has come out of Bethany and how now he is being called by the magnet of crucifixion that he must go in to have these last days. But we have also seen that he has first raised Lazarus from the tomb, and he has proved that death is another fantasy in man's mind. That death, and through the knowledge of Lazarus being raised, we learn this, that man is an eternal being, and that he is in this earth at the will of his soul and of God, and that through the willing and in God, he can resurrect himself daily. As he can die daily, so can he also be resurrected in his own consciousness. So the lesson we receive on Palm Sunday is at the ending and closing of Lent, which is a 40-day period divided into 4 parts, in which we look into ourselves and learn what we are on the physical world and plane, learn what we are in the emotions, learn what we are in the etheric, or that is which is energy processes of mind and life, learn what we are at last as that one who serves God or serves Satan. For in the last days before Easter, we are tried under Judas's glance, under Judas's ray, that whether or not we are looking and believing in God and have total faith in him. How Jesus must have suffered for the stupidity of man. All teachers suffer when their students are dense. There are two sorts of students in the world, those who have doubt, and these are in the majority. And there are others who have faith because they have proved God in other incarnations, and they know and recognize their teacher. But Jesus was in an environment in which men were still living in tribal actions. They were still living in the blood guilts of their families and races, and they were still living in that ostracism in which man is singled out as being a foreigner or a heathen or being an outsider, and that only the little small nucleus of each other, or that is, of that which is centered in likeness, which men would agree with. Jesus confronted all of this. He left his words as jewels into the earth itself, that they might germinate in the souls of man, and that man occasionally might take hold of these jewels and be awakened in them. So he knew where exactly to get this donkey on this day, the donkey he was to ride on the day of Palm Sunday. He knew exactly. Now, if you are familiar with the words of Jesus, you know that he never says Mr. Jones or Brother Abraham or Brother Isaac or things of this nature. He always says a certain man or a certain woman. So he told his disciples, a certain man has tied to a certain post a certain ass's coat. Go and get this coat. I will ride upon him. A very selected coat out of a divine grace was to be that vehicle through which Jesus was to come into Jerusalem, and into which he was to be and see the witnessing of men's souls tortured through his crucifixion for the karma to come in this world. So we are thinking of Jesus now, and he is entering now close to the gates of Jerusalem. He has come out of the semi-wilderness ways of the ochre-colored rocks and stones and of barren places, and this little donkey has walked over paths strewn with stones and has heard the echo of his feet, and he has heard the talking and the murmuring of the voices of the disciples as they accompanied Jesus on the way into Jerusalem. Then finally they are coming to the gates, and all through the city there's a tremor coming. They do not know why this is happening, but there's something contagious that is igniting between the souls, and they are going towards the gates of Jerusalem. And they are going towards this gate with some sort of excitement and expectancy, because from one mouth to another it is being stated that Jesus is coming. Now they are all knowing that the priests and the scribes in the temple have contested Jesus, and that there are ominous things coming out of the temple regarding what they are going to do to Jesus if he comes back into Jerusalem, and if he confronts them with these truths and these miracles, especially the miracles which was consummated through Lazarus in raising him from the dead. So here Jesus is with this mighty power to raise persons who have died into life, and to see them once again walking, talking, loving, living, eating, and when formerly having been cold and deaf, in death and in a death state. So now we are seeing that flowers suddenly spring into the hands of many people, and palms from the branches of trees are torn off, and suddenly they are waving their scarves and various things and placing them before Jesus. And the little donkey is bringing him into Jerusalem with little feet, dainty little feet, feeling within himself this mighty spiritual presence sitting on his back, because animals know exactly who is sitting upon them when you are riding them. A horse knows everything about a person who rides him. So did this little donkey also know that upon his back was a precious cargo, a cargo simple and humble, a cargo of humility, a cargo of peace, and a cargo of grace for this very whole and complete earth. So it must have been a very heaven choice by the species angels that this particular donkey would be that one chosen. Do animals live after death? Do they reincarnate? Many people ask this. Where is this little donkey? Where is his generated energy he received from Jesus? Is he serving out among the wild burros? Or is he at the hand of someone who is using him as some sort of vessel of slavery? So we think with our thoughts running in many directions on this beautiful Palm Sunday, which is so sacred to all of us. It is sacred because it is a time when our Lord resigned and completely renunciated his physical life that we might have more life in the Father in heaven, that we might understand that we live beyond the physical body, that we might understand that we are God-realized men and that we are sons of God in potential. All of these things our Lord was thinking on when he looked towards Jerusalem and once again went through the cedared hills of Lebanon's planted in that border of Jerusalem into the places of Pilate, Herod, all of those emanations from the evil, from the priests who dared to confront the Son of God. All of these things Jesus knew. He knew all those things. Think what it is if you're a husband or a wife or a child, and you suddenly realize that you are growing more spiritually and you're growing sensitive to that person. You're beginning to know what that person thinks and feels, and you're beginning to realize the emotions overflowing from that person and the meaning back of them. Think what it means to just know, almost know one person, and think what it was to Jesus to know everyone in the world. And not only that, to know everyone to come, because he was Christ-centered. The Christ Spirit was in him, and he was in the Father, an absolute God in all. So here we find Jesus now in the gates, and the excitement and tumult, and the priests in the background saying, we must do something to end this. We can no longer be endangered between Rome and their political powers and their laws. We will lose our prestige, and we will lose all we have gained now. We have finally gained all of this in the treasury. We have finally gained all of these imports and export powers. And now suddenly here we are. This man holds in him the danger to destroy the total Hebrew race. So they plotted. They laid out a complete plan. They knew that Jesus would not be crucified by those who were welcoming him on this day. They knew it was impossible, but they knew the psychology of the masses, that if there were just a few strong ones who had leadership, they could put them in different parts of the masses and convert that which had been the welcoming of Jesus on his entry into Jerusalem, convert it entirely towards his crucifixion. They understood this. They understood the psychology of mass thinking and how if these strong ones raised their voices to condemn Jesus, that they would, with apathy in their own souls and the inertia of the Tamas spirit in them, they would stand aside and do nothing. This is a common thing existing today, that in the herd and mass of migration of souls in the earth, it is always those who either lead for Satan or lead for God. So there's never any choice for man in this world. The only choice in the world is between good and evil. So Jesus came to show us this in a heart way. He opened his heart, which we call bhakti in Niscience. He opened his heart to their sensitivities But he knew that the very ones who were laying flowers before him and the very ones who were sounding hallelujahs and praises were going to also sound their voices for his crucifixion. He knew the power of influence between mind and emotion, of careless men, of men not thinking, of men not truly standing for their faith and not truly standing for the reality. I have stated there are two kinds of students in my life. There are students who doubt, who must be trained intellectually to understand the concept of the universe, creation, and God endless. And there are those who come to me with faith with no questions, knowing the instant they meet me that what I bring is true. So was it most greater for Jesus in larger expansion of understanding. Jesus asked for the hearts of mankind so that he might build a bridge of hearts to God and that God might be realized in this earth itself. So we are back now to the work of Jesus. What was his task? He came on the summoning of God as a cosmos soul to this little ball we call Earth. He came at a propitious time, planetary and timing as to aeons and age. He came with a mission, and he lost not one moment of time in consummating or bringing this mission to its fulfillment. He knew when he was being initiated in the Father, in the earlier part of his manhood, the answer to what was the ending of his life. He knew all of these things. He was prepared for it outwardly. On Thursday night, we are going to recapitulate the Garden of Gethsemane here and to have the Lord's Supper, sharing together, and communion and Eucharist. We are going to proceed from the steps of the time of the donkey being taken from the post, of Jesus mounting it, and going on the way towards Jerusalem, where there he must meet eye to eye with Satan and be crucified. And then finally, to that resurrection through which he was taken down from the tomb, which we will consummate on Good Friday. Beloved ones, I'm thinking today of this little donkey here. His name is Ebenezer. He is my house guardian at the door of my house. He is a very alert little guardian. He carries my potatoes in his basket. And he is a very, very humorous sort of reminder that humility is very necessary in the spiritual life, because the sin of this age is arrogance, mental arrogance, thinking that we are greater than God, greater than his Son, thinking that Jesus is obsolete, thinking that that which he has said is not suited for this time and age, thinking that what has been sealed in us through certain parts of tradition, religion, to isolate and to excel, or that is, or to eliminate by creed. All of these things, this little donkey reminds me of. He reminds me of that ride into Jerusalem, of the beauty of the face of Jesus and the resignation and acceptance of what was before him. Man is not a great soul, a truly great soul, until he has submitted to the will of God. And submission is dying to that arrogance of the mind, that arrogance of intrusion, that arrogance which only can harm oneself and prevent him from entering into the kingdom of heaven within himself. Oh, beloved ones, there's so much to teach you. There's so much for you to awaken to, that you may also teach and heal. There's so much to know on this Lord's Day. Make it sacred in your hearts. Hold it fast in the cave of your heart and let it germinate there as a seed of the cosmos. God planted his Son in the earth that we might become sons and be like him. And we shall know him as he is when we are like him, and not until we are like him shall we know him. You may look into John chapter 3 to find this verse. It is very plain. Until you become like Jesus, you cannot see him or know him, nor will he appear to you in any second coming. The second coming of Jesus is right this minute, when you have realization of him as the Son of God, sent of God, to give all men of this earth that lifting, and there's no exception. When we say all men, we do not say we are converting you. We are saying that it was destined that Jesus come, that all men be lifted from their lower consciousness into the higher degrees of the vibration of God realization. Today is a naming day. The power of naming was given to me of God. It was given to me to enable that person who has been named to begin a new life and to take seriously all of the things related to God in his life and to sacredly and reverently treasure his knowing of God and his speaking of God. The nomenclature gift of naming is a spiritual gift from heaven, a gift to the soul. I have had the grace to receive this gift. Changing of names and the giving of the grace names to the many persons I have named as a minister and servant of God has changed the life of hundreds of people. Beloved ones, today we will first take the offering for Palm Sunday, and then we will follow with naming sacraments, and we will bring the infants to be named first to the altar, and then we will follow with the naming of those whom I will call. You are blessed on this Palm Sunday. I'm so happy to see your sweet and beautiful faces, your dear friendship and your love. On the altar today, there's a lace cloth, a special cloth for cosmic seasons. That cloth has just come from Pennsylvania, where we observe the pre-Easter conclave. That was the most powerful thing, and it was made powerful because of your prayers, your faith, and your encouragement. Now gather your strength now and begin the experience from this day onward for Easter Passion, and look inward and become aware of what is happening inside of you. For inside of you are divine atoms awaiting to come forth and eternal atoms awaiting to explode. 1 second of awareness can totally change your total life and life pattern. God bless you, beloved ones, as you are witnessing today what will be done on this altar. Thank you. Will Miss Sell and Philo